I am going to stand on the already established protocol by our keynote speaker so that I don't skip any processes and I also don't, waste much of our time. We are talking politics, sex and power, and I'm going to talk about the politics part of the book, but not necessarily reviewing the book because that has been expertly done by our keynote speaker and fantastically done by the book reviewer. But let me immediately celebrate Adora, whose pen has drawn back the curtain to review Nigeria's intricate dance of politics and power. Her work, Politics, X and Power, emerges not just as a book, but as a beacon of excellence in Nigerian journalism, illuminating the path with her unique insight into the nation's political saga. I've been asked to speak on Nigeria's political trajectory, a narrative of hope or ineptitude. I find this paper's theme very interesting, even though it presents the tale of Nigeria's political trajectory as a binary one, an either or. This narrative, far from a binary tale, unfolds as a vibrant tapestry woven with the threads of Nigeria's complex history, struggles, and unyielding sprint of resilience. Nigeria's journey is not a simple story of a hope versus despair, but a dynamic cycle that encapsulates both. It is thrilling, often heart-wrenching, sometimes tales of an undying hope, repeatedly dimmed by the ineptitude of a select few. However, it is this very hope that fuels the nation's relentless pursuit of a brighter future, despite the looming specter of a bleak political horizon. This tale does not stop here. Beyond hope and ineptitude lies a more sinister force, what I call today willful destruction, a deliberate erosion of the very pillars meant to uphold the people's dreams. In my considered opinion, therefore, the theme does not encapsulate this third force, this third dimension, that Nigeria's political trajectory is not only one of hope or ineptitude, or as I have said, hope and ineptitude. It is of the organized, willful destruction of the very things designed to deliver on the hope of the Nigerian people. So I ask Adora to bear with me as I speak on the theme by introducing the third theme, that is the Nigerian political trajectory, a tale of hope, ineptitude, and willful destruction. In this analysis, I will restrict myself to discussing Nigeria's trajectory post-1999, because with the advent of the Fourth Republic, representing the most extended period of democratic rule in Nigeria, history was made, and this history is considered as the biggest onset of hope and potentially the most crushing dashing of the hope of the Nigerian people. However, because history is a fundamental tunic that enshrouds society's past, grounds its present, and uncovers its future, I will sometimes make a detour to the past. Many people have insisted that Nigeria, as presently structured, was not designed to succeed. Given the many defects in its system of socio-political and administrative governance, which prevent efficiency, enables corruption, entrenches nepotism, divides the Nigerian people along ethnic lines, foists an over-bloated cost of governance to the Nigerian people, it is becoming increasingly difficult to argue with that fact. The character of the Nigerian state derives from the various experiences of the past, such as the colonial experience, the amalgamation, the various coups d'etats, the civil war, the ethnic politics, and what have you. But permit me to cite the Nigerian economy as an example. Colonial policies significantly altered the Nigerian societies in several ways. The colonial economic model in Nigeria aimed to grow the import and export markets by boosting cash crops. The British introduced a cash economy using the British pound, and compelled Nigerians to engage in wage labor, rapidly altering the traditional agricultural production and capital accumulation methods. Same thing is still happening. Just exchange the dollar for the pounds for the dollar and agricultural produce for oil. So therefore, from the very beginning, the concept of Nigeria, or a Nigeria that delivers on the hope of the Nigerian people, appears to be misplaced. This begs the question then, why do people have hope in a structure designed to work just for a few and not optimally for the many? We must ponder whether it is wise to have hope in a defective and damaged vehicle to take us to the place we hope for. Don't get me wrong, please, ladies and gentlemen. The Nigerian tale has been one of great hope. So many instances typify this hope and tell its tale in a manner that even the widest scripters or scriptwriters cannot script. For instance, Nigeria's hope for a better system of governance was at its highest in May 1999 when the military era ended and ushered in a democratic setting. I recall how President Olusegun Obasanjo and Vice President Atiku Abubakar took their oaths of office. There was a great deal of hope that the pain, suffering, and torment of the military era had finally come to an end, and that our country was firmly placed on the path to socio-political and economic growth and development. It was a great time to be alive if you are in the venue that day. Several events in the years that followed gave Nigerians reason to have faith in the country. Several economic reforms opened the country to the outside world and stimulated growth in many critical sectors. Equally important was that there was a system of government where the arms of government were ready to checkmate each other and curb each other's excesses. There are so many examples. We saw the legislature fight to maintain the independence while fighting to curb the executive's excesses. Many examples exist in the early days of the Fourth Republic, but a particularly prominent example lies in the legislature at the national level, vehemently fighting for the independence and opposed any attempts to impose the leadership on it. Another example is the stiff opposition that the legislators across the country gave to attempts to amend the Constitution to grant a third term to the head of the executive arm of government at the federal and state levels. In all this, the Nigerian people witnessed robust debates anchored in the intellectual contributions of the elected representatives of the people, some of whom are seated here today. Within the executive branch, there was an effort to hold people accountable and ensure that the government worked for the people, which had not happened in Nigeria for several years before 1999. We saw the executive arms at the federal level try to hold itself and the states accountable. Many examples of this also abound. Impeachments, prosecution of governors who had continually dipped their hands in the till, the arrest and prosecution of a former Inspector General of Police, the arrest and prosecution of key ministers, some of whom were long-term friends of the president at the time. We also saw the judiciary give robust landmark judgments that rebuked the excesses of the executive and legislature and extensively improved our jurisprudence. Finally, we saw solid intra-party opposition when heads of the executive acted outside the powers granted by our laws. This is where we saw a sitting vice president file landmark cases that challenged his boss's excesses and won. We saw governors being reinstated into office after improper impeachment processes. We saw the rights and liberties of the Nigerian people upheld in many cases. We saw members of political parties look at and challenge the people who control the levers of power in the country when those levers were improperly moved or moved in ways that were against the interests of the people. It is essential that people do not get me wrong. Things were not perfect at all by any stretch of the imagination. There was still a lot of corruption, ineptitude, and inefficiency. My point is that there was growth enough, economically and politically, for the Nigerian people to have hope that we were on a path to sustainable development. But the tale of Nigeria's political trajectory has never been straightforward. Moreover, it does not appear like it will ever be. As democracy continued to deepen, it seemed that there was a determination by a powerful few to destroy the very institutions capable of checkmating each other, upholding the rule of law, curbing the excesses of the nation's elite, securing the nation, growing the economy, and protecting the lowly. This destruction did not happen overnight. It may have been accelerated over the last few years, but there has been a sustained effort to destroy the fabric of the nation for the protection and benefit of a few. Moreover, it has taken many shapes and many forms. It has happened in compelling prosecuting agencies to ignore prosecution of people who break our laws as long as they are close to those in power. It has happened by bending institutional laws to allow people to make millions of dollars at the expense of the economy. It has happened in systematically weakening our security agencies by the theft of monies meant for equipment for the welfare of the men and women in uniform. It has happened in a few people's political advancement over the Nigerian people's collective will. It has been a death by 1,000 cuts to the point that one wonders how Nigeria would survive. The tales of incredible levels of corruption, the invasion of the homes of Supreme Court justices, and the removal of a Chief Justice of the Federation, the ineptitude of the security agencies, primarily police, the inefficiency of the civil service, and the destruction of critical economic infrastructure. This is just unending. Each example is more mind-boggling than the last. Each tale defies belief. We are witnessing in real time the capture of the Nigerian state by the nation's political elite for the purposes that the elite may destroy its soul to enable it, like in Adora's word, suck its resources. We are witnessing the judiciary cower before the nation's elite and the executive pocket the judiciary. Long gone are the days of the institutional independence when arms of government jealously guarded and performed their constitutional roles. Long gone is that glimmer of hope that this country would not only survive, but it will thrive. The hope has been replaced by a pervasive air of doom, despondency, and despair. Our current reality is that as the Nigerian state is currently primed, in its current trajectory, on this path, there is only one inevitable conclusion: the death of the Nigeria that we know. The indefatigable Nigerian spirit in me will not allow me to believe that there is no way forward. Whether our leaders will implement policies to stop this slide to a Hobbesian state, your guess is as good as mine. Nigeria is currently in its most extended period of uninterrupted civil rule, which has lasted for 25 years. According to the Freedom House's assessment, Nigeria is only partly free and exhibits features more in tune with competitive authoritarian states. The policy reforms introduced by the present administration, including the removal of fuel subsidies, the exchange rate policies, seems to have taken in a very big bite on the people. The suffering in the country has so much escalated so that over 130 million multidimensionally poor Nigerians can no longer breathe because of the suffocating effect of the reforms. If we are to survive as a nation, our elites need to learn that it is in their enlightened self-interest to forge a common consensus that develops the country, grows the economy, secures the people, and protects the rights and enforces the obligations. As a nation, we must define right and wrong. The consensus will then lay the foundation of the rapid developments on the political elite. The political elite must come to a point where they see what is wrong and call it for what it is. As a nation, simply put, we must reward and incentivize right and discourage and punish wrong, no matter who else is God. I know it sounds much easier than it is, but no nation can survive unless and until it establishes a code of moral conduct. Finally, given that corruption has become pervasive in Nigerian politics today, it is time that we begin to implement anti-corruption measures, including prosecuting corrupt officials and establish transparent procurement processes. I can go on, but I will stop here. But at this point, I must say that While so much has been written about the Nigerian story, our tale has largely been one of misfortune, but I think that there is light at the end of the tunnel.